Hi there, friends. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Haleigh.
And I'm Johnny.
And you're listening to Johnny, Haleigh, Day of
Fun. Who do we have on today?
I don't know. Let's dive into the episode and find out. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Johnny Haleigh Day of Fun podcast. I'm Haleigh with my brother Johnny, and today we are joined by Will Savive, horror and true crime author. Hello, Will. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. First of all, I just want to say it's my birthday weekend, so
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. So I'm
Happy birthday.
over. So I want to apologize to the editor of this fine program in advance.
You know what? I think if you're a little bit hungover, that's probably on brand, right? If you're in the horror, horror, true crime realm, I think, a little bit of self-medicating when you're in those subjects is probably,
For sure.
it's appropriate.
It's apropos for sure.
So, we connected. I was looking at initially your Amityville book is what I was looking at. So if we can kind of start with you have a background in forensic science, and you started with the true crime writing. So give us a little bit of a rundown of how did your creative journey begin then, if you started with sort of a science background?
Well, so I guess I started, like you said, with true crime. I started writing, while I was going to school, and always been very interested in forensic science, the true crime shows, and it's something I was addicted to it. So I wanted to find out what was really behind it. You watch like CSI and all this stuff, and you see like these people, these CSI people with guns and stuff, and it's not realistic. And I wanted to learn, so I wanted to learn the ins and outs, and I went to school for it, and I really, really, just loved getting into the details of the murders and finding out what happened, these mysteries. How do we find out what happens? How do we fill in these gaps? So I actually started, believe it or not, writing the Jonestown book, my Jonestown Don't Drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that took about 7 years. I actually was.
I mean, that case is a very involved case, and it's such a big, the huge event, obviously, like the Jonestown event is probably what most people know, but like,
right.
I mean, the build up to it and what it took to get there. Right.
It took a few years just for them to get to Jonestown. It took Jim Jones was, working in the community in San Francisco. He was working for, the mayor, who actually later on Mayor Moscone wound up getting killed. And if you remember, Harvey Milk also was killed. And, a lot of people believe that those things were linked to Jonestown. So there was a lot of things going on for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He was in Jonestown, basically the only communication they had was him over the radio, over the speaker. And he was telling them, if you go back to the United States, they're putting Black people in prison camps. You got to stay here. He wanted people there. And, I guess for the mass murder suicide, there's a lot. I don't want to get too far into Jonestown because, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, you could do several podcasts on Jonestown.
I go on and on, but I do believe that there was some type of, CIA type connection with Jim Jones. And I detail that in the book, and I detail his whole life. But that book kind of took me in a different direction, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I kind of put it down. I was like, I don't think I really have like a story here. And then along comes Amityville. A friend of mine came to me and said to me, hey, I've been investigating this Amityville thing. It's a real house. And I said, what? It's a real house? I thought it was just a movie. I didn't know that it's real.
Yeah.
And, what's crazy about Amityville is we went out there, we took a couple of photos. Okay. I'm trying to make this quick because it's a long story, but I took a couple of photos. We saw some orbs in the photos, and we're like, what is this? We brought it back to my place, and we're hanging out, and I had this little wine fridge, and I had some wine in it. I like to, I know people say, well, you had merlot in the fridge, so I like to chill my merlot also. All of a sudden, we're looking at these orbs and these pictures, and we're researching Amityville at my place, and all of a sudden I hear a pop, And I look down and there's merlot at my feet. And it's like, so somehow it exploded in the fridge and it's literally like at my feet. It looks like blood. There was like
That's
really mysterious things that happened while I was like, just, researching. Then those orbs, we took them to Bergen Community College in Paramus, and we had the film department. I had a friend there. We had them review it for, whatever it could have been. And they ruled out like pollen, water spots, all this other stuff. And they just said, we don't know what it is. And it was very creepy. So from that point on, it just kind of piqued my interest. I started researching. And then when I saw the murders, obviously of how that went down with 6 family members killed in their bedroom with a high-powered rifle that you could hear like 5 blocks away, and no one woke up out of their bed. I mean, it just, all these things started coming together, like true crime, paranormal, everything you can imagine is in one case. I'm like, this is it,
right.
So that's how it caught me,
It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's a little fun, almost like, a paranormal sort of signal to you, the Merlot on the floor, like follow this little blood trail, see where this goes for you, kind of
I'm
thing.
telling you. And the last thing that I was waking up at 3:15 every morning when I first said I was going to write the book. I swear. And one time I woke up and I said, oh my God, I'm not looking at my phone. I put it under the pillow. I took it out like 10 minutes later. It was 3:15. I'm like, I got to write the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how, so I'm also a writer, and I do think that to some degree you're kind of channeling when you start writing, whether you're doing something where you're researching or whether you're writing fiction, like you're connecting to some kind of energy that's kind of driving you forward and nudging you to explore this way, explore that way, kind of thing. And it's, it's kind of an interesting exploration when you're a writer. I think that you kind of have to you connect to this story energy in some way, and then you have to follow it where it goes.
Right. I think that also in the universe too, like what you put out there, it really does kind of come back to you, and you tap into some energy source, and so, yeah, for sure.
That's really interesting. I love that. So it's kind of like Amity almost sort of found you, right? More than you sort of found Amityville to go after as a story.
100%. I mean, 100%. That was not on my itinerary of things to write about or anything. And it's great. So over the years, I was able to connect with, a lot of the Amityville people. Some of them unfortunately passed away. I had a chance to meet Lorraine Warren, which was an amazing experience.
Again, it's, tapping into an energy, right? Like it's interesting to kind of explore that, because you kind of have to, obviously everyone has to decide for themselves what they believe, but I think there's a lot to be said for there being some kind of like other energy, whatever you want to call it, that, attracted not just what happened, can you talk maybe a little bit about that? And I do want to touch on your other books and things, but I am just really fascinated and interested in like the Amityville story and the murders that happened. Like it really does kind of seem like there was maybe a very strange energy that would kind of existed like maybe before with did you find that? Like
I agree.
what would you say you found there?
It's a total enigma. I mean, even when I went out there, it was weird. We had a couple things happen. We were investigating it. Basically we were canvassing the neighborhood and nobody really wanted to talk about it. And then we went up to this one house, which was close by the house. And they said, you should talk to this guy. He lives like 4 houses down, and he's an older man. His name was Ed Kangasir, and he was like 90 years old. And he's like, he had lived there even before that house was there. Like he's lived there for, the original house was moved a lot. And so they put another house on there, and the house was too big. So that's why it's faced sideways. So the 2 windows are facing the street. The front door's not facing the street. The 2 windows look like eyes or facing the street. That's why, because it was too big to put on the lot. So they had to put it on sideways. So this guy was there before that house was even put there. So anyway, we went to him and we met with him, and it was just like all these weird things started happening. We were driving down the block to go to meet him, and we were like, he was like, park here. And we're like turning. He's like, turn the car. We were like arguing. And this is one of my friends, and we hit into a tree.
Oh,
right?
jeez.
That's the way to go. We hit into a tree. later on, we're interviewing Ed that day, and he tells me that his next door neighbor, Miles, whatever his name was driving with a bunch of friends who never saw the Amityville House and wanted to see it. And as they're driving by, they go by and they hit into a tree, like right by the house. I mean, come on, you got to be kidding. We were like,
you gotta love those synchronicities that line up like so perfectly like that. And just more, nudges from the universe that like, hey, you're on a right path. You're doing the thing, that you're supposed to, that we've asked you to do, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I just hope it was the good spirits that were asking me to do it, but
you kind of never know. You got to follow and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. But
that's a really interesting and a really great person to be able to talk to, though. Someone who, was there before any of the incidents, and like, what a great, like, just that you lined up to be able to talk to that person is, like, what a perfect interview to have.
It was amazing because he had a lot of inside information. He also had a lot of like I said, I was kind of getting stonewalled by many of the people who lived in Amityville. And then this guy kind of was giving me the insight into what all of them were saying and thinking. So they're not telling the public about it, but they're kind of like in a little group talking about it. And all of a sudden, this guy is like telling me all these shocking revelations. It was I mean, it was amazing. It was eye-opening. It was, I was so excited writing that book, you know what I mean? And researching it.
Yeah. And, it's really, it's really cool that, like, obviously there was you were getting help from somewhere, right? Like getting to the right places and to get an inside scoop, to get like the real true story, because that is something that is really kind of interesting. And like John and I had watched, like a documentary on Amityville before this, just to kind of, because it was the same thing where I was familiar with the movie, right? But not necessarily the true story of what had happened. And it's, I mean, there's so much, it is controversial. Like there's a lot of controversy because there's a lot of sort of, I don't know if he said, she said, it's the way you want to put it, but because there was so much hype to the movie and to like the
book, Jay Anson's book,
right, the book and kind of the instant like sort of fame or attention, right, that happened with the family that had lived there after the murders. Like, I imagine that it's really difficult to get any of them to want to talk about any of it, right?
Yeah. So Chris, we talk every once in a while, like I said, and I did an interview, myself and Laura Didio, for a documentary, an Amityville documentary that hasn't come out yet. And,
very cool.
Yeah. And they had called me, and I became, good friends with the producer as we were, we would go over a lot of the deals. I was the first one they interviewed. And, they had told me that he contacted Chris and Chris didn't want to do the interview. And then myself and Chris were talking, and he kind of was thinking about it, and then, but he just didn't want to do it. I mean, I remember that was George Lutz's stepkids. So that's why when I say Christopher Quarantino, he was Christopher Lutz. And then but I guess he went back to his original name, his father's name.
Well, I imagine there's probably you don't want the notoriety and when you're going about your life, you don't want to necessarily have everywhere you go to be attached to that story and, have everyone ask about it. And because it becomes sort of a shadow over you, right?
Right.
People aren't interested in you. They're interested in this thing that you were interacting or attached to this story, right?
Right. And he had said Christopher had basically, he was 7 years old. So what could he really remember? I don't even remember being 7. So you know what I mean? But he said that George, I think he said that he saw like an orb. He had an experience where an orb or some kind of figure was coming at him down the hall. He got really scared. That's really all he remembers from that time.
Very cool. So I know you've written a lot of other things. So where is the sort of transition from the true crime into the fiction?
So I'm a very creative person. Jonestown and Amityville were kind of written, I sourced everything in the back with a detailed bibliography. It was kind of like a long essay paper for school, like a 300-page, So I kind of, I have a very creative side. I play guitar, I sing, I do all kinds of stuff creatively. I love editing, videos, and I do all kinds of creative stuff. And so it wasn't feeding my creative side, the true crime. Plus, it's very controversial. The topics that I've taken on were very controversial. And
Mhm.
by nature, I mean, I didn't want to really be controversial with this. I want to come on wearing a suit jacket with a Rolling Stone shirt.
I dig it.
I want to just I don't want to be like in a suit and tie all the time and like just sitting up, because when you're talking about true murders, you can't sit here and make jokes and all this kind of stuff. It's not, because it's really not funny. I mean,
you can if you create that's your brand, right? Like, but
I
get what you're saying though. Like, if you want to be able to explore those things in a more sort of fun, lighthearted sort of way, you have to. The creative world is where you have to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was finding it hard to kind of create that type of image where I'm being myself, yet able to talk about these things in just a loose manner. So anyway, combination of those things, I transition. But I got to be honest with you, fiction is much harder than nonfiction. Writing fiction. And I don't even think it's close. And I don't know if I've ever heard many people say that, but from my experience, nonfiction is there. It's all there. You just have to research. The research is hard, everything. And then you just kind of compile all this information and you make a story, you have a message in it or whatever. But fiction, you're right. You have to create characters. You have to create a storyline. You have to create everything is you. And
this is interesting. This is interesting to me though. So, and maybe, so I know John's been kind of toying with writing. John's a musician.
A little bit.
But I have sort of, I started from the creative writing sort of side. It's just interesting to me that you say that it's easier to write nonfiction. And I wonder if it's just maybe because that's where you started that it's easier. Because for me, it's opposite. Like I struggle with nonfiction. I love reading it. This is interesting maybe. And I don't know. So I love to absorb nonfiction, like podcasts and reading and books and documentaries, but I always prefer to write like fiction, and I'm not a huge fiction reader. So I don't so how does that go for you then? Are you still big into reading nonfiction while you're creating your, what's the balance there for you?
I have 4 stepkids. And I just had a baby, 2-month-old.
Oh, so you are not reading.
I don't read anything. I'm lucky if I read like a Facebook article at this point.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Well, I mean, look, I do love reading, and obviously, and it's hard to finish anything these days. I prefer writing over reading. Listen,
I'm with you.
Everybody has their own process. Stephen King says, if you're not writing, read this, read that.
Yeah.
You have to do, you have to write 10,000 words a day. I don't know. You know what I mean? Everybody has their own process, I think. Here's to me what means more than anything when you write fiction. I am very prepared. I write a 10 to 20 page outline. Okay. Before I even before I even start on the first chapter. I outline the characters. I give them a backstory. I go over the story and outline the story, like literally like 1 or 2 or bullet points, however. And it's fluid. I keep changing it throughout the process. But to me, the story's written before I start writing.
Yes.
I like that. That's really an interesting, I'm a lot more fluid, I guess. Like I just I don't know, but it's interesting to me. Like that's one of the things with writers, like, or just creative people in general, like the processes that we have. Yeah. The thing that you create because it's always something that fits you.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's always, you have to create a process. And so for you, coming from nonfiction, like that's how you would have structured all of your information too, right? Like, so you're like, okay, I have to put this case together.
Right.
Kind of a similar thing with stories.
I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way. Like you just said, actually, I'm absolutely correct.
Yeah, like it's kind of like you're building your case file and then you write your book from it, right? Like, and that's how you but that's a really cool process. And so in your fiction then, like you're doing horror fiction. Is it just because you enjoy horror as a genre, or did some of that sort of come from the subjects that you had nonfiction researched? Was it, you know, a transition because of, or both? Because it's a field of interest or a genre of interest for you personally.
So that's a great question because I actually started in 2020, right? So I had like used to do creative writing when I was younger and stuff. I couldn't put all these things together. I think it was because I didn't have that process in place. To me, sitting down and just freehand writing. What do they call that when? Excuse me, it's called a panster. It's a panster. That's a new term. I just
Okay,
learned.
I was gonna say that's
It's
not familiar to me.
it's somebody who just sits down and writes off the seat of their pants. So it's like
Okay,
free.
so that's how I do that. Like when
Right.
I'm writing, it's
Yeah.
more of a like in the moment, slow sort of thing, and so that's what's kind of interesting to me. Like you basically build the whole thing first, and for me,
Yeah.
it's sort of like I'm more
Yeah.
in like I have to sort of connect to whatever the energy of that story is in some
Right.
way, and like and then it kind of goes, and like I kind of have things that sort of like are revealed to me as I'm going. But
Right.
no,
It's
go
funny
ahead.
because I saw an interview with R.L. Stein and he said his process is he writes the end of the book first and then he goes
Yeah.
backwards and tries to fool people, all along the way and trick people. I just thought that was really, really cool. But that's
Yeah, I
not
love
my
that,
thing.
and that's so funny. I was just thinking the other day about Goosebumps books that like I used to read R.L. Stein all the time, and I
Love
was
him.
that person that I always would read the last page of the book first. Like I was that person
Yeah.
because I wanted to be excited about how I got there, right? Like,
Right.
and it was
Yeah.
that's kind of what it was. It was like, okay, now I know. Like, oh, what? How do we get there? So
Right.
that's interesting that that's the way that he wrote it, was to start with
Right.
the end. I love that.
Very cool. Can't do that with my books, or else there's no use in reading the rest because
Yeah.
I guess my MO would be character development, storyline, and the big twist.
Okay.
If you can figure out where this is going, even by like the last chapter, I didn't do my job. That's what I feel like as a horror author. I want you to be completely surprised.
So you want like an aspect of suspense with it.
Of course. I want
Okay.
action, adventure, suspense. Kind of try to put everything into one. I like the psychological aspect of it. I love, psychological horror. I don't want to just, have it gory and bloody. I want it to be you to be scared. I want you to be more scared when the person is being stalked than when they get caught. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind with horror, because I think of things like what comes to mind for me is Jeepers Creepers, the movie.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as soon as you saw the
Classic.
Jeepers Creepers monster, right?
Yeah.
There was it was like, okay, well, I know it's a big reveal, but I'm less scared now because I've seen it,
Right.
right? And so like
Right. Of
there's a
course.
kind of a fine line there that you have to follow, and so
Right.
like what I mean, not to say that horror as a genre doesn't have its place for like I love monster movies and like
Yeah.
slasher
Yeah,
movies.
of course. It's just preference. That's all.
Right. But
Mhm.
like the psychological element, like when you can really get inside someone's head and have them freaking themselves out,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
that's fun to play with too, though, and
Yeah.
Like
that's
what's that
in
Mel Gibson movie? Where he did with M. Light Shyamalan, whatever.
Signs.
Yeah, like I mean,
Yep.
I thought that was a little too much because I got to wait 2 hours to but still, I got to be honest. I mean, I'm saying that, but it was amazing. Like when they were banging on the door, you were like, "What is on the other side of that door?" I mean, you only got like a tiny look at the alien, but you were just scared the whole movie. Like I was petrified. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Amityville was just, to me, it had. Where as a kid watching Amityville, I couldn't sleep for
Yep.
like months. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
flies in the window. I mean, that was really traumatic. So that I love it. It scared the hell out of me. And when I found out it was a true story, oh, I got to know about this. Oh, and it's right down the block for me. It's only an hour away.
Yep.
By the way, I live in Amityville now, so
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Look at you're
Yeah.
just right next to the action.
they call me Amityville now.
Will. But that's okay. So is that something that helped inspire your anthology of short stories, the series that you have?
My next book after Nomad Station was The Horrors of Willville. And
Okay.
it's an anthology series, a horror anthology series. Every episode is different. There's different characters, different storyline, right? So I was like, let me challenge myself. Can I do this? Every episode is 6,000 words. I'm going to try to keep it around 6,000. I'm not going to be exact, 6,005, 5,900, whatever. But it was so challenging. It was so cool because I feel like it's much harder to write a short story than a long story.
Yeah.
So writing,
I think this is funny again because I feel the opposite. Like I'm in the other camp, like because that's a lot of what I'm writing is like episodic and short stories and short fiction, and then I combine them together and kind of it builds a world, right?
yeah,
But like I don't. It's just again interesting that like for you it's the opposite situation. Just condensing it into short form is harder than doing the long form.
Yeah. For my brain, that the like 6-paragraph short story works better because then I'm forced to finish it. I cannot keep, because you can run away with anything. You let
yeah,
yourself.
right. And that to me, that would be
But that's
a
the
structural thing where you might want to have that the story written down first, kind of like it's almost like training wheels, or like when you bowl, when you bowling, and they put
The
for the
bumpers.
kids, they put those the bumpers up.
Yep.
I put those bumpers up for myself so I don't, I stay within that narrow landscape of the story. It's gotta end. It's gotta hit the pins. The Horrors of Willville, I actually, which is really cool. I had a couple people reach out to me, some production companies, and one guy is supposed to be getting back to me on and we're gonna be trying to get this, I guess, put a pitch deck together and try to get it as a streaming series.
That
So
would
I
be
really
so
care.
cool. I would love if keep us posted on that
I
because we
definitely
would
will.
love to have you come and talk about it. That would be so
I
exciting.
would. I'll come back for sure. And so it's Horrors of Willville 1, Horrors of Willville 2. There's 5 episodes in each. I have Horrors of Willville 3 pretty much outlined, but I have a couple more books that I'm almost finished with one right now. It's really scary, but it was really cool with Horrors of Willville because I reached out to John Kassir. I don't know if you know John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the
yes,
okay,
yes,
yeah.
I saw that on your website.
So he was so cool. And I was like, I obviously paid him to do it. And he's like, look, write me a script. And we're back and forth 3 times. I wrote a script. And to see this icon read back my script and even improvise a little bit. And then I added the music and I did all the editing. That was like so much fun. And I told him, I said, John, if this series gets picked up, I would like you to be involved in it. You know what I mean? So I think it's possible.
I mean, if the universe has put it together this far, it can put it together the rest of the way,
Absolutely.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
that's so exciting. That's so fun.
So it's so crazy that was like such an inspiration for me. Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone. That's kind of the format of this series. So it was really cool to have him, endorse it and then also possibly be in it. I mean, that would just be.
I love it.
Yeah.
The dream.
Put it into the universe that we will see it. I love it.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about doing a short movie, but it's just, I mean, even those, you're talking like one episode of Horrors of Willville, 6,000 words. I could run like $200,000. It's astronomical and ridiculous of what these things cost nowadays.
I was gonna ask about that.
Oh, you're gonna ask me?
Well, because I read I was on your website. I was reading about it. It's interesting to me. That's not it like sort of the flip side of Oz, I guess. Like the dark mirror world of Oz. So,
I was scared when I saw the Wizard of Oz. I was scared. Like when I was a little kid, it was fun, but I was scared. I remember being terrified. It was one of the first. I felt like it was the first horror movie I ever saw.
Yeah.
It was just a natural transition. And so in my book, all your favorite characters are with the witch. So the Tin Man is the Tin Soldier, and he's her right-hand man. And he's like the Terminator with an axe.
Okay.
And then you have the lion, she doesn't have a broom. She has a lion with wings. And he flies, and he has a tail that is a scorpion's stinger. And he's and nasty, and he basically flies around and eats little people. You know, he loves to eat the little munchkin, the middle liver.
Okay. Did you do
I'm
any
crazy, man.
sort
I got issues, man. I got issues. Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
we
no,
all do.
I think it's great.
The Scarecrow to me is like, it's just right there for horror. I mean, the
Well,
Scarecrow
yeah.
already has a mask on, you know what I mean? Where, you know, it's a scary Scarecrow mask. And it's a plane crash. So that's how it happens. And it's not a house that goes, it's a plane crash.
Okay.
Well, but I like that because you're kind of also bringing it into maybe not modern era necessarily, but like sort of again like blending like the fantasy world that is Oz, but blending it with like our modern world.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
interesting to me, right? Like, so
Yeah.
bringing those fantasy elements into something where, oh, we could maybe interact with that. Right?
Yes. Like this
our
could happen to
world.
you, maybe.
Right. Like
I want
Bermuda Triangle
everybody
kind
to
of.
think. I want everyone to be scared, and I want everyone to be able to put themselves in the position of the person or the protagonist or whoever is getting chased. I want them to feel like they're running. From
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, anybody could get on a plane. Anybody could get on a subway train and wind up at Nomad Station,
Mhm.
or you can wind up in Oz.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
You know.
I do love that element, that sort of like everyday life and your everyday autopilot like could suddenly be shifted into something just like
Yeah.
magical, paranormal, just
Right.
horrific, right? And it kind of gives you that element of like that's how you can relate or attach to it as the reader, as the audience member,
Right.
so that you really are in it with the character.
Yep.
I love that. That's so cool. And
For
so
sure.
that one is out as an audiobook right now.
That one is.
The Investigative Odds. I love the cover, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Not only is it all my books are audiobooks.
Mhm.
Okay.
And all my books are in all formats. Ronnie Rollins, he's an English voiceover actor. He did the voice for this. I really wanted everybody I wanted that specific thing. I wanted an English speaking, like an English accent to do this. And he was
There's
so
something kind
brilliant.
of extra magical when it's the English accent, right?
He's, oh my God, I don't know what it is, but he really, yeah, it was like he brought this whole thing to life. And that audio book won best action adventure audiobook of 2022 by audiobookreviewer.com.
For
Really
sure.
good.
I mean, but that's still really excellent for you. And I do love that, it's really fun when you're a writer and you get to have someone perform it, I think, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
You know.
That's the best thing about it, because when you listen to it back, right? And you're reviewing, you're like, did I write this? Because they're acting it out. And I had like, what was really cool at the Horrors of Willville, Sadie Sanders, she, has to do a lot of characters, because you're talking about 5 different episodes, different characters in each one. And just her voices, the way she did them, it's like, wait, that's how I wanted it to sound. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and it's just when it's acted out to you, it's just, wow. It's amazing. It makes it all worthwhile. It makes you want to keep doing more and more and more, I'm like an
Oh,
addicted.
yeah, for sure. Like, how do I get to get the next project finished and get that out, because I want to see
Yeah.
how that turns out. And yeah, no, it's again kind of like our own little rabbit hole that we keep going down, right? Just keep
Yeah.
following that next story that's kind of revealing itself to you.
I have a terrible memory. So
Yeah, me too.
why I'm a writer, I guess. I have to write everything down. I really do. When I have to
That's
go-
where we
when I-
match up 100%.
That's
I
where
am
we're
so-
100.
like I know 100%. Everything must be. I have notebooks
Yeah.
everywhere, and I'm just like I have a notebook in my purse, and I have like little because the second I think of something, I'm like, you better write that down. You are gonna forget. So
Yeah.
like I am
Yeah.
absolutely like that, just constantly. And I do this like I will send myself stuff on like Facebook Messenger, like
Mhm.
so like I'm like because I'm like okay, I know I won't delete
Right.
that. It'll just kind of
Right.
stay in the cloud,
Yeah.
sort of thing, right?
Right.
But the same thing where it's like, oh, I better jot that down now, because you're
Yeah.
gonna forget later, and
And-
then you're gonna go back to it and be like, oh, I needed
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not regulated to just writing. That's grocery lists.
that.
Oh yeah.
I have to write a grocery list. If I could say 20
Yeah.
things, and if I don't write them down, I'm coming home with 2 of them.
Oh
Yes.
no, that's
Well,
100. Two of
yeah.
them and 4 other things that you didn't.
Yeah,
delete.
if I was,
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Right.
and like
And
10 other things that I didn't even go in again.
Yeah.
I lived in the woods at that time. I wrote 6 books. 5 of them I lived in the woods. And they were I mean, I was like scared every night. I was up till
I
5
was
in the
gonna
morning.
say, so
was
you were
nuts.
living in the place where you're watching and waiting for the axe murderer or
Yeah, I was gonna
monster.
say you took a very old school approach to writing.
I thought somebody was gonna kill me out there. There was bears out there. There was everything. I seriously, it was scary, but it was
You're
it was
just
a really cool experience.
getting yourself into the right energy to be writing. So get yourself good and scared, and you can write the scary stuff.
Yeah, and it's really important, like your workstation, kind of where you set up your office, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think it's really important, for writing because it kind of things flow from that. It's like you kind of manifest, you create your own, energy. And I had like skeletons and like head, like fake
Yeah.
heads.
I was gonna say I
That's a
saw
little
on
too
your
far,
website. So no, some of the photos that you have on your website, I do think they're really fun. Like you have the skeleton writing at the laptop thing, and,
You kind of
and
just have to, you know, you get into it. If you're really into it, you're into it, And I
right,
love it.
create your environment.
I have like 5 boxes of like horror masks. You know what I mean? Like I made my family all put the horror masks on for Christmas. Like we took a Christmas picture and they're like,
Yeah.
this is not even Halloween. I'm like, just put the mask on. But they're cool. They play.
Hey, that's nice when you get your family will play the game with you a little bit. I did
Yeah,
see
they're
that
cool
too.
with
I did like that, the Merry Christmas where you have everybody's
Thank
snack.
you.
Like that was really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was cool.
it was fun. So like when you write in the woods and at home, how do you differ as far as like because you got to have a way to get over writer's block, and you have to have sort of like a system that you do before writing to get yourself
Right.
like a lot of people say they'll like if people smoke, they'll sit down with a cigarette and they'll smoke, or they'll smoke while they write, or have
Yeah.
a cup of tea or something. How does that differ if you're in the woods?
Yeah, do you
versus
have any
if you're at
little
home?
yeah, what are your little things that you use to kind of get yourself into the flow?
Well, it's
Does your-
definitely bourbon has to have bourbon. There's no, I'm serious. I'm not even kidding. Like,
Before we go, let people know where they can find you if they want to find all your stuff.
yeah, you can find me at willsavive.com. It's Will SAVIVE.com. All my stuff's there. This interview will be there. All my books, links to where to buy them from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever.
And
You
we
can
will
check out
definitely put that. We'll link that in the description below. So yes, do check it out. I love your website already. I'm already super
Oh,
interested in the
thank
Oz
you so
story.
much.
I think yes, the Embittered of Oz. I love the cover art, and I love sort of the
Thank you.
idea of revisiting a very much classic that everyone's familiar with, right? But
I'm going to send you both a copy of it if you'd like. I'll send you an audio.
Oh, awesome.
no,
Yeah,
I
I'll
love
send
that.
them an email. You can check them out.
Oh,
Awesome.
I love that. Yes,
That'd be great.
100%. Thank
Awesome.
you so much, Will Savive, for joining us today. This has been so much fun. We absolutely have to have you back, and do keep us posted, please. If you get rocking and rolling on a series, we can help you promote. Oh,
Yep.
we would so love to have you back to
We'll
talk.
stay in
Yeah.
touch. This business is about networking, connections. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Cool people, having great conversations like this. So that definitely we'll do this again.
Yeah,
Oh,
anything
I
we come
love
out
it.
with, I'd love to see it. So,
Yes,
Thank you so much.
100%. Thank
Appreciate
you
it, guys.
so much for joining us.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening, y'all. Hope you enjoyed our guest. I've been Haleigh,
and I've been Johnny.
and you've been listening to Johnny, Haleigh, Day of Fun. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/JonnyHaleighDof. Email us at JonnyHaleighDof@gmail.com. And follow us on TikTok, Johnny Haleigh DOF, and on Instagram. Thanks again for listening, y'all.
Peace.
Special thanks to the Parapost Network for the support of their community. Check out all the great podcasts on the Parapost Network on Facebook.